Hey, the other day I sent out a message to my students on Instagram and I'm actually looking at their responses. You see, I asked them this question: what is the hardest thing about studying English? And I received over 100 responses, but one of the responses that really stuck out to me was this response: writing complex sentences in English. You see, I realized that students, just like you, have a hard time writing complex English sentences. And that's why I made today's lesson. Because in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you some complex English sentence structures. I'm Teacher Tiffany. Let's jump right in. All right, so here's the process. The first thing we are going to do is listen to a real conversation between two Americans. Now, for those who haven't heard this podcast episode, I actually spoke to my friend Sabine, who is a New Yorker, and we had a great conversation. So you can check out the full conversation by clicking the link in the description to listen to the podcast episode, okay? But for our lesson, the first thing we're going to do is listen to a snippet of that conversation. Now, after we do that, the next thing we're going to do is review one complex sentence from the actual conversation. Then we are going to actually analyze it and break it down. And finally, what we're going to do is look at examples of how it can be used to talk about your life. All right, so let's get started. We're going to look at the first clip of my conversation with Sabine. Here we go. Now, how far away are they from each other? Not Long Island and Brooklyn.
It depends exactly where you're going. So if I were to look at the distance from where I live now to where I used to live in Brooklyn, I would say, give or take, no traffic, I can make it, I would say about 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay, good stuff.
By car. Mm-hmm.
It sounds
Public transportation.
To Maryland.
Public transportation might be, I would say, about an hour and 30 if you're taking like the Long Island Railroad.
All right, so we saw that clip, and don't worry, we're going to watch it again so that you can hear exactly what she was saying and exactly what I was saying. But there was a sentence that I want us to look at, a complex English sentence. So let's check out our first sentence. Here we go. The first sentence is: if I were to look at the distance from where I live now to where I used to live in Brooklyn, I would say I could make it in 40 minutes. Now that's a doozy. That's a really complex English sentence, but I'm going to teach you how to actually make a sentence just like this, okay? So now we need to analyze it. Now, looking at this sentence, let's start analyzing, all right? The first part is if I were to. Now, we use this to introduce a possible action that will become the support, foundation, or lead into my next statement. So in other words, I'm introducing something. So I can say, if I were to, and then I'm going to say something that is going to support my action, okay? So let's look at it a little closer. I know it's a bit challenging right now, but I guarantee you'll be able to do it by the end of this, okay? So going back, here we go. Now we have I would say. So this is used to introduce our guess, assumption, or opinion. So, okay, looking at it a little bit closer. Remember, my friend was talking about Brooklyn, New York. She was talking about the distance. So, again, if she were to, so she's introducing a possible action. The action, look at the drawing. In her mind, she's saying if she were to look at the distance now from the previous place she used to live in Brooklyn, if she were to do that, then she says she could make it in 40 minutes. She's guessing, she's assuming, or giving her opinion. You're seeing how these two are connected. Now remember, if you need help, don't worry, because I have the free PDF that you can download by clicking the link in the description, okay? So let's see some real examples that you can apply to your life using this complex English structure, okay? English sentence structure. So here we go. All right, so again, we have if I were to, which is plus the possible action, I would say plus the guess, the assumption, or the opinion. So again, in my friend's example, she said if she were to, and the action was look at the distance from where I live now to where I used to live in Brooklyn. That is the action she is referring to. If she did that, right? Then she continues by saying her guess or her assumption. All right. So going back, she says, I would say, and now we get the guess or assumption. I could make it in 40 minutes. Okay. That makes sense. Now let's see it for your actual life. Here we go. First one. If I were to, now the action, have another opportunity to meet him. So let's say, for example, in your life, let's say you go on a blind date, right? And you meet this person, but you're not sure if you're going to be able to meet him again. So we're saying a possible action, meeting this person again. If I were to have another opportunity to meet him. Now, what's the next part? You remember? All right. The next part is I would say, and then we're giving a guess, that our interaction would be a lot better than it was. So again, I connected a possible action with my guess using if I were to and I would say. Make sense? All right, now let's look at the second example using the same complex English structure. All right. So the second one is if I were to ever publish my own book. Again, a possibility, a possible action. I would say that most people would probably like it a lot. So again, I gave the possible action. Maybe I would publish a book. My guess, I would say most people would actually like it a lot. Kind of makes sense? Now, what we're going to do is listen to the short clip one more time and see if you can hear when she actually says it, okay? So let's go back and watch the clip again. Here we go. Now, how far away are they from each other? Not Long Island and Brooklyn.
It depends exactly where you're going. Mm-hmm. So if I were to look at the distance from where I live now to where I used to live in Brooklyn, I would say, give or take, no traffic, I can make it, I would say about 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay, good stuff.
By car.
Okay, great. So you heard it that time, right? She actually added a little bit of filler words. I would say give or take. Now, the expression give or take just means you are estimating or you're giving an average. So you got it, right? Now we're going to move on to our next clip and our next complex English sentence structure. So here we go. Now we're back on my screen and our second clip is right here.
But yeah, no. And I would say in comparison to a lot of other maybe cities that have underground subways, our subway system is centuries old. Literally centuries old. Mm-hmm. And so it appears a bit run down and it's not always the cleanest. So for people visiting, they might be quite overwhelmed by the sensations and the smells and the different fragrances that might exude from riding the train.
Okay, guys, now this part of our conversation was actually really fun. So again, you can check out the full episode by clicking the link in the description because we were talking about the New York subway system and she started to compare it to the subway systems in other countries. But she used a complex English sentence structure. So let's check that one out. Here we go. Now, this sentence structure was, I would say, in comparison to a lot of other cities that have underground subways, our subway system appears a bit run down. Oh, very quickly, guys. So, this expression run down just means not taken care of or messy or old. So not new and neat and tidy. So she said the New York subway system looks a little bit run down. And when she was talking about it, I thought about my time in Korea because the subway system in Korea is immaculate, which just means very clean and not dirty at all. So when you compare it to the one in New York, you can see a really big difference, all right? So let's look at this sentence structure that she used and see how we can also apply it. And you can use it in your English, have it in your repertoire, or have it in your secret stash of English sentence structures that can shock and impress those who are listening to you, okay? All right, so here we go. All right, so again, this is our sentence, and now we're going to analyze. So the first part is, I would say, in comparison to a lot of other ... Now, this pattern or structure is used when comparing two things and giving your specific opinion. Now, remember, at the very beginning, it says, I would say, and there's a short pause. Well, that means I would give my opinion about something, right? But we said it's comparing two things. That's why we have in comparison to, all right? So let's see this again in an actual real life example, all right? So going back, again, she's comparing other underground subways from other cities to the one that's in New York, all right? So looking again, she's comparing and then she gave her opinion. Now, if we're looking at it for real life, I would say in comparison to a lot of other, and then give the comparison and your specific opinion. So here we go. Cities that have underground subways, our subway system appears a bit run down. That's her opinion. So here we go. I would say in comparison to a lot of other, and then I'm giving the comparison, people living here, her apartment is extremely clean and organized. So again, this person is comparing this woman's apartment to other people's apartments, right? This is the comparison that's happening. So she said, I would say, which means I'm about to give my opinion, and then I pause. In comparison to a lot of other apartments, this woman's apartment is very clean and organized. So you see, the idea is an idea you already have as well. You just need to use this complex English sentence structure, okay? So we have one more example. Here we go. The second example using this structure is, I would say, in comparison to a lot of other, now the comparison, crimes happening around the world, now the opinion. This crime was not too serious. So again, we're looking at various crimes happening in other countries and also the one we're discussing. We're comparing these two groups and then we're giving our opinion. Make sense? Great job. Now, guys, remember, if you want to keep studying with me, you can always join my academy, the Speak English with Tiffany Academy. I have the link on the screen right now, but you can always click the link in the description, and I would love to have you as my permanent student, all right? I love teaching you guys, and I love using formulas, okay? All right, now we're going to go on to our last structure, but before we do that, I want to let you listen to that clip one more time to see if you can hear the sentence she said, all right? So here we go, going back to our clip. Here we go.
But yeah, no, and I would say in comparison to a lot of other maybe cities that have underground subways, our subway system is centuries old, literally centuries old. Mm-hmm. And so it appears a bit run down and it's not always the cleanest. So for people...
Okay, guys, so you heard it. She said it appears a bit run down and it's not always the cleanest. But you heard that first part. I would say in comparison to a lot of other cities. So you heard it this time, right? Okay, now we're going to move right into our next clip. Okay, so here we go. Going to take you back to my screen. Now we're going into clip number 3. Here we go. So Americans are known for, like, smiling and saying, hey, how are you? How's your day? But New Yorkers are a bit different. It's not that they're rude. It's just a different culture. So can you explain that aspect of New York?
I would say, again, because New York is, well, let me preface this. When I say New York, I'm not talking about New York State. Gotcha. I'm talking about New York City.
Yes, New York City.
So we're talking about the 5 boroughs. We're talking about Long Island. And even Long Island has its own culture, you know? So, but I would say, having been born and raised in Brooklyn, in New York City, I would attribute that just to the fast-paced life that most of us live. We're just going. We're going. We don't have time to stop. We don't have time to say hello because we're running for the train.
All right, guys. So again, you saw that clip and you saw that she and I were enjoying the conversation, but she said something. She used a sentence structure at the end that is very important. Now, let's see what that sentence structure was. She said, I would say, having been born and raised in Brooklyn, I would attribute that to the fast-paced life. All right, so that's the sentence she used. Now, if we analyze it, we'll see the first part was, I would say. Now, this introduces the fact that what you are about to say is your specific opinion. You guys are noticing that these sentence structures that we're looking at deal a lot with your personal opinion and how to introduce the fact that you are going to give your opinion. So she said, I would say, introducing the fact that, hey, I'm about to give my opinion on a certain topic. All right. Now, the second part of this, let's go back and look at the second part. The second part is, this shows that you are about to introduce something personal that will support your opinion. So she said, having been. So again, she said, I would say, letting us know that she's about to give her opinion. And then she said, having been. That means that whatever she's going to say is related to her personal experience, and it's going to support her opinion. So again, I would say, short pause, having been, ... and then the opinion. So A, B, C. All right. So again, looking at, let's see, a visual explanation of the conversation. She said she was born, see the little baby, and raised in New York. So that serves as a support for her opinion about this topic. All right. So let's see how we can do this in real life. Again, I would say plus your specific opinion, and then having been plus something personal that will support your opinion. But remember, guys, having been is going to be in between, I would say, and your actual opinion. So it's A and C, and then B is kind of sandwiched in the middle, okay? So again, going back to my screen, I would say, having been born and raised in Brooklyn, I would attribute that to the fast-paced life. Again, her opinion is, I would attribute that to the fast-paced life. So let's see how we can use it in a real-life situation for ourselves. First, I would say, having been a student at this English Institute for 2 years now, let's pause. So whatever opinion this person is about to give is supported by the fact that they have been a student at this institute for 2 years, meaning we can trust their opinion. All right. So now let's see what their opinion is. Okay. Going back to my screen, that the teachers here are amazing. So again, this person could have said, I would say that the teachers here are amazing. Perfect sentence. But when that person put in the middle proof or support by saying, having been a student here for 2 years now, that's a support their own personal experience. It makes their opinion stronger, which means you can do the same thing. Okay. All right. Don't forget, you can download the PDF for free so that you can practice this and see the formula. All right. So don't worry. Okay. Now looking at the second example we have, I would say, having been, here we go with support, in a similar situation to yours before, that the best thing is to just leave it alone and walk away. All right, so this person's opinion is, hey, you should just leave it alone and walk away. But why should I listen to you? Why should I do what you're saying? Why does your opinion matter? Well, they said, having been in a similar situation to yours before. Suddenly, I'm like, okay, your opinion is valid. Your opinion is good because your experience matches or supports your opinion. Does that make sense? You guys can do the same thing. It's all about thinking in English and figuring out how to put these sentences together. So let's look at the clip one more time and see if you can hear it as she says it. All right, here we go. We're going back. Let's go. So Americans are known for smiling and saying, hey, how are you? How's your day? But New Yorkers are a bit different. It's not that they're rude. It's just a different culture. So can you explain that aspect of New York?
I would say, again, because New York is, well, let me preface this. When I say New York, I'm not talking about New York State. Gotcha. I'm talking about New York City.
Yes, New York City.
So we're talking about the 5 boroughs. We're talking about Long Island. And even Long Island has its own culture, you know? So, but I would say, having been born and raised in Brooklyn, in New York City, I would attribute that just to the fast-paced life that most of us live. We're just going. We're going. We don't have time to stop. We don't have time to say hello because we're running for the train.
All right, guys. So you heard it that time, right? She says, I would say, having been born and raised in Brooklyn, I would attribute that to the fast-paced life. So you heard it that time, right? Now, I want to know, did you notice that she paused a bit because she was giving her opinion and thinking about it? You can do the same thing. Now, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. But remember, you can watch the full podcast episode or even listen to it, our full interview, the one I did with Teacher Sabine. We had a great time together. Remember, all you have to do is click the link in the description, okay? And you can check out the podcast episode. And if you are already in my academy, you can actually watch the full video, okay? Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you learned how to actually use these 3 complex English sentence structures. Remember to always speak English, and I will catch you in the next episode.